Hello everybody, welcome back to Fighting Tiger Gaming. Today we are going to go over our commander that we built out of the Zendikar Rising draft booster box. We chosen Tazri, Beacon of Unity. Biggest reasoning for this is we are wanting to do a Wooburg kind of build. It's four colorless mana with one plains. This spell costs one less to cast for each creature in your party, and then you will pay a 2 in a blue, 2 in a black, 2 in a red, and 2 in a green. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may reveal up to 2 cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and or ally cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library. It is a 4/6 commander. So benefit that we're going to get out of this is having a Wooburg build. The secondary objective is to cast out or use the commander's ability to go ahead and play out what we're wanting to play out, or at least gather what we're needing. As you all remember, this game, how it works is make it, break it, win a game. We only break open the boxes from draft boosters. We only pick cards from that set, and we do allow ourselves 10 cards to help mana fix. And after that, we build our deck and we try to win the match. That being said, to go into the cards, we have our 10 selected for mana fixing: a Temple of Mystery, a Temple of Epiphany, Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Milady, a Command Tower, Temple of the False God, a Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Commander's Sphere, and a Fel of War Stone. Those are the 10 cards that we are allowing ourselves into the deck. To go over the remainder of the lands, we did get a Base Camp, a Black Cleave Cliffs, and we ended up pulling a River Glide or Glade Pathway. Obviously, we have the rest of our cards set aside over here for our mana to fix that up. Now, to go over our next is going to be our creatures and our Planeswalker. We did manage to pull a Planeswalker, Nissa of the Shadow Bolfs, however you pronounce it. Landfall: whenever land enters the battlefield under my control. Put a loyalty counter on Nissa of the Shadow Boss. Pay plus it, untap a land I control, and have it become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste and menace until end of turn. It's still land. Or I can minus her for 5, and I can put a creature card with converted mana cost less or equal to the number of lands I control on the battlefield onto the battlefield from my hand or from the graveyard with 2 1/1 counters on it. Next up, Rising Zendikar Rising has landfall and classes. In this case, we're going with our warrior classes to start off with our creatures. So, In-Ring Captain, Flying, Vigilance. It's a 4 cost for a 1/1. But the important factor of this is whenever this enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it for each creature in my party. A party consists of a cleric, a rogue, a warrior, and a wizard. So if I have 4, I'll go ahead and put 4 1/1 counters on it, making it a 5/5. Paired Tactician. Whenever this and at least one other warrior attacks, put a 1/1 counter on Paired Tactician. Shattered Skull Minotaur. This spell costs 1 less to cast for my creatures and the party. It is a 5/4 for a 6 cost. If I have all 4, it's 2 mana for a 5/4. Kargan War Leader. Other warriors I control get a +1/+1. It's a 3 cost for a 3/3. Kargan Intimidator. 2 costs for a 3/1. And I can make a pay 1 that I can choose of these 3, and I can pick 1 per turn, or 1 that hasn't been chosen this turn. That being said, I can give it a +1/+1. I can make a creature become a coward so they can't block, or I could target a warrior, which I can choose it, or another creature that's a warrior at least, and it gains trample until end of turn. And then we did pull out a Morgu Fury Acum. Each creature I control gets a +1/+0 for each time this has attacked. For each time it has attacked. This has a landfall trigger, so when I play a land, it'll go ahead and give me a second combat phase, but I have to make sure I play the land during my main phase. Those are my warriors. Next up, the rogues. We pulled a Shadow Stinger. I get to tap another untapped rogue I control, and Shadow Stinger gains Death Touch until end of turn. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player mills 3 cards. It's a 1/4. I've added this just to help out with some abilities. There's a card or two that I have set where it can only do this if an opponent has at least 8 cards in the grave. So this will help out. Soaring Thought Thief. 2 costs for a 1/3. Has flash, so I can cast it anytime. Flying. And as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues I control get a +1/+0. And whenever one or more rogues I control attack, each opponent mills 2 cards. Again, its ability only works whenever I got someone with 8 cards in their grave or more. Next one is Nighthawk Scavenger. Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. It has a 1+ star or asterisk by 3 for 3 mana cost. It deals its power is equal to 1 plus the number of cards among cards in my opponent's graveyards. That being said, it's different types or characteristics. We've added a Thieving Skydiver. We're going to steal someone's soul ring. It's just going to benefit us. We pay 2 to cast them out. We can pay its kicker. We can't make it be 0, but if we paid the 1, we can steal someone's soul ring, or maybe someone has a mana vault. Who knows? Those people out there, we just gotta steal their stuff. To be honest, Zargus, Thief of Heartbeats. Spell cost 1 less per creature that is in my party. Again, 4 can be in my party, making this become a 2 mana drop. Flying, Death Touch, Haste. It's a 4/4. Other creatures I control have Death Touch. Whenever a creature I control deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker instead. I could just ping it for 1 and off it goes. It's dead. Now the next creatures or class we got is the Wizards. Yo, Wizard Harry. We have Thundering Spark Mage. Whenever this enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of creatures in my party. 4 mana cost to deal maybe possibly 4 damage to a creature or planeswalker and get it off the board for 2/2. Not a bad deal. Windrider Wizard. Flying, whenever I cast an instance or sorcery spell, I may draw a card. If I do, I have to discard a card. 3 costs for a 2/2. Not a bad deal. Especially if I'm casting out things and maybe I have an extra land I don't need. I just throw it out, get a new card. Seagate Stormcaller. As the kicker cost 2 to cast it, or pay 5 more to cast for its kicker. Whenever it enters the battlefield, copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana of 2 or less that I cast this turn. If I kicked it, I copy that spell twice instead, and I may choose new targets for those copies or for the copies. Alright, next class is going to be the Clerics. So we have Spring Mantle Cleric. Enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each color mana spent to cast it. It's Wooburg. I can pay 5 of the 1 of each colors, and it becomes now a 7/8. Cleric of Life Bonds. Whenever a cleric enters the battlefield under my control, I gain a life. Whenever I gain a life for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 counter on this cleric. Aura Skyclave Hierophant. He's also a cleric. Lifelink 3/3 for 4 mana cost. Whenever this or another cleric dies, return target cleric card with lesser converted mana cost from my graveyard to the battlefield. And then we got an Archpriest of Iona or of Iona. Power is equal to the number of creatures in my party. So for a 1 cost, could be up to a 4/2, 3/2, 1/2, 0/2, however many I need to go about. At the beginning of my combat turn, if I have a full party, target creature gets a +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. Now we'll move to the non-class creatures that we have in the deck. We have a Mursa Root Grazer, 2-drop for a 2/3. Vigilance. I get to tap it and put a basic land card from my hand onto the battlefield. Return a basic land card that I control return a basic land card to my owner's hand if need be. Mainly I'm going to use this to kind of help out with ramping. Relic Golem. It's a 3 cost for a 6/6. Now, this can attack or block unless an opponent has 8 cards in their grave. Once again, back to what we were discussing earlier. As long as I can have someone with at least 8 cards in their grave, this creature is going to be very beneficial. I can pay 2 and tap it and have it mill someone 2 cards and at least get something started. Vine Gecko. The first kicked spell I cast each turn costs 1 less, and whenever I cast one, I get to put a 1/1 on this creature. And it's a 2 cost for a 2/2. We got a Tangled Florahedron, 2 cost for the ability to tap for 1 mana. If it comes down to it, I can always switch it over for basic land. I don't know if I went over that, but there are cards like this where you can just pick land instead. Now the next set of creatures that we have a Gracchamaw Skyclave Ravager. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it gets a +3. It gets 3+1/+1 counters on it. And whenever another creature I control dies, if it had counters on it, I get to put a 1/1 counter on Gracchamaw. And when this dies, create a XX black and green Hydra creature token where X is the number of 1/1 counters on Gracchamaw. So not only does this creature get bigger, when it does die, it leaves behind another one of itself, pretty much. Now, granted, it is a token, so it could go away pretty easily. We added a Wayward Guide Beast, 1 cost for a 2/2. It has trample and haste. Whenever this deals damage or combat damage to a player, return a land I control to its owner's hand. So the cost of it is I get a 2/2 beast that already gets to start swinging, but I have to put land back in my hand. Again, we do have some landfall creatures, so putting one back out does benefit us at least. Tazri Paragon. It's an elf for 2 drop for 3/2. It's either a cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard. It doesn't matter. It's one of the 4. I can pay its kicker cost, and whenever it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, reveal the top 6 cards of my library. I may put a card that shares a creature type with it from among them into my hand and put the rest in the bottom of a library. Again, we have rogues, warriors, clerics, and wizards. The benefit for us is we get to pick and choose which one we like, and this creature is all 4 of them. We ended up pulling an Ancient Green Warden. Has reach. It's a 6 drop for 5/7. I can play lands from my graveyard, and if a land entering the battlefield causes a trigger ability of a permanent I control, I get to trigger that ability an additional time. So it comes down to the landfall triggers. So this is a 3 drop for a 3/3 and has landfall, and it's Khazad-dûn Mammoth. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, it gets a +2/+2 until end of turn. Well, its ability will trigger again based off the previous creature. So instead of just a 2/2, it gets a 4/4 at that point. Swarm Shambler, 1 drop, 0/0, enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. Whenever a creature I control with a 1/1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, I get to create a 1/1 insect creature token. I can pay 1, tap it, and put a 1/1 counter on this creature itself. Next up comes down to Archon of Imari, or Imari, however you pronounce it. 3 drop for a 2/3. It's a flying. Each player can't cast more than 1 spell a turn. Kind of slow down things if I need to catch back up if have to. Non-basic lands opponents control enter the battlefield tap. Great way to slow them down, but also will slow me down. Next up, we have some artifacts that we ended up pulling. So we ended up pulling a Skyclave Relic, 3 cost. I'm going to pay for its kicker whenever I have the opportunity to. It enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, I get to create 2 tapped versions of it, and they each get to tap for 1 mana of any color. Paying 6 to be able to get 3 mana of any color is going to benefit me in the long run. It is going to be a little slow, but again, you play with what you got. We got an enchantment called Roost of Drakes. Pay 1, or I can kick it for 2, well, 3 additional, so it'll be 4, and I get to create a 2/2 flying blue drake. And then whenever I kick this creature, I get to create that on top of that. But whenever this enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 drake token, and whenever you cast a kick spell, create a 2/2 drake token. We have a few spells that will be doing that. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Fedara or Fedari Retreat. 4 cost. It's an enchantment, landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under my control, I get to choose one. Create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature I control. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. In some cases, it's going to end up being the counters because I have creatures that need those abilities to trigger off. Next up, we have some sorceries. Feed the Swarm, get rid of a creature or an enchantment. I do lose life based off its converted mana cost. Strength of Solidarity, pay 1. Target creature gets a +1/+1 counter for each creature in a party. In reality, it may be 1, it could be up to 4. Who knows what it comes out to be, but the benefit is I pay 1 for at least a couple of counters on them. Thwart the Grave, it's a 6-drop. This spell costs 1 less depending on my party, so it could end up costing 2. Just 2 black swamps. I get to return a creature card and up to 1 target cleric, warrior, or wizard. So I can return 1 normal creature and a cleric, rogue, or warrior when it comes down to it. And I can bring it from the graveyard and put them onto the battlefield. Basswood Surge, it is a 4 mana drop. I can pay the extra 4s to make it a 7, make it an 8 drop. I get to search my library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. And if I do this, I get to put 2 1/1 counters on it if I kick it. I'm not going to kick it. I'm just going to do the 4. Balagid Recovery. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand, or I can make it in land. It's a 3 cost. It depends on the situation where we need. Coveted Prize. 5-drop. This spell costs 1 less for each person in my party or each creature in the party, so it can cost 1. Search my library for a card, put it into my hand, then shuffle and shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying the mana. Maddening Caponi. I don't know how you pronounce that. Sorry, guys. Wish I knew. Pay 2, or I can pay 4 more additional to it, making it 6. Each opponent mills 8 cards, and if I paid for a kicker instead, each opponent will mill half their library rounded up. And then we got an Agadim's Awakening, or Agadim's, however you pronounce it. 3 mana drop and an X. Return cards from the graveyard, from my graveyard to the battlefield, any number of target creature cards that each have a different converted mana cost. If we're kind of like around turn maybe 7 to 9, if I'm way behind or lost everything from a board wipe, best way to bring back everything is with this. And we ended up pulling a Shatter Skull Smashing, 2-drop with a X cost, and I can pay up to X being anything divided to 2 creatures and divided among them, or if I pay more than 6 on X, it deals twice X damage divided to any among those. Divided as you choose among them instead. My bad. I'm over here stuttering and twisting my words. Let me clean this up. And then coming up to the final bit, we have a negate, counter target non-creature spell, a deliberate, scry 2, then draw a card, broken wings, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying, spoils of adventure. The spell costs 1 less, so it could be 2 costs or 3, however many it needs to be. I get to gain 3 life, then draw 3 cards from it. A Malakir Rebirth. Choose a target creature. I lose 2 life until end of turn. That target creature, when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its controller. Spikefield Hazard. I get to deal 1 damage to any target, and if the permanent would die, be dealt damage this way and then die, it would be exiled instead. Cinder Clasm. Sheesh. Cinder Clasm. There we go. 2-drop. I can pay 1 extra, make it a 3-drop. It deals 1 damage to each creature, or I can have it deal 2 damage to each creature instead. It's a light board wipe. There wasn't many board wipes in this box that we ended up pulling from. Rolling Regrowth. Another way to ramp our mana. So sacrifice a land and get to put 2 tapped lands onto the field. And then Concerted Defense. I can have it at counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1, plus an additional 1 for each creature in my party. So making it into 4 to 5, depending where we can be at. I can't even pronounce that, but it's a disruption. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1, or it can make it into land. A shelter. Target creature I control gains protection from a color of my choice until end of turn. And a Kaberi takedown deals damage equal to the number of creatures I control to target creature or planeswalker. Allied Assault. Up to 2 target creatures get +X+X. It's where X being the number of creatures in the party. Soul Shattered. 3 costs. Each opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among those. And then we got a Volkut Awakening. Put any number of cards from my hand onto the bottom of my library and then draw that many cards +1. So it was a simple box. It was at this point it was kind of grab what you can and make a deck out of it. So luckily enough, we were able to pull some decent cards in the deck or out of the box and make it into a decent deck. I hope it comes out to be perfect. I appreciate y'all watching this. Do apologize for the stuttering and whatnot. I wish I could do better for y'all. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll just start writing out a script. It's kind of hard to go about that. I kind of want to do this on a whim. To me, it's easier that way, and it's better to do that versus, hey, someone wrote a script and that's that. I appreciate y'all watching the video. Let me know if there's anything else. Like I mentioned earlier in the first video, I did order a bunch of boxes, so we got a bunch more content to come through. I appreciate you guys again. You all take care and have a good day.